Well, stem cells are very often referred to as the basic building blocks of our body. But to put it in simple terms for you, we must remember that our bodies are created from the fertilized egg in the womb of a mother. Now, once that egg starts to divide and multiply and expand to ultimately grow into a baby, all of those expanding cells are very, very potent, naive, special stem cells that go on to create every tissue and bone and skin in the human body. That's why they're really considered to be the basic building blocks of our body. We all have stem cells in our body today, you and I, and these cells in our body go on to look after us. Their main function is to heal us, look after us, rejuvenate, repair us, and heal us when we're sick and so on. Unfortunately, as we age, these cells lose their potency and they become less effective. As you know, a child heals much faster than an old person. So these cells, being so special, we need to try and get access to them, store them if we possibly can as early on in life because of that potency, so that we can try and use those special features that these cells have to potentially use them in treatments when we need them.
On that note, what are some of the fatal diseases and disorders that are currently being treated with stem cell technology?
Well, there's over 70 different diseases. These are quite simply categorized mainly into blood type disorders, the blood cancers and leukemias and lymphomas and immune system disorders, mainly disorders that originate in our bone marrow. So we most often use examples like leukemia or the anemia. So sickle cell anemia is a very well-known one, especially in Africa. In certain areas in Africa, there is a very high prevalence of sickle cell anemia.
What do you make, Mr. Rel, of the current research and clinical trials taking place in Africa at the moment on stem cells? Do you think that many countries on the continent realize the potential that these cells have, to find possible solutions for a wide variety of health conditions, as you mentioned?
There's over 4,500 different studies that are being conducted worldwide with regards to stem cells. There's probably only 18 of those 4,500 at best are found here in Africa, and majority in Egypt and so on. So I feel that Africa is definitely lagging behind in the realization, what stem cells might be able to hold. But perhaps an unfair comment, because these stem cell or these clinical trials are often very, very expensive, and that might be one of the barriers that we have here in Africa. But Cryo-Save as a company fully supports this, and we would really honor the opportunity to be able to conduct properly structured clinical trials within Africa, because like I mentioned about the prevalence of sickle cell anemia in Africa, there's a huge need for treatment here in Africa, and stem cell technology is really opening up avenues where previously none existed, and we need to really bring that level of technology and expertise into the African continent.
Now, stem cells have hit the headlines more than a few times in recent years. I remember I spoke to a group of researchers at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research here in South Africa last year, who became the first in Africa to establish a groundbreaking biomedical stem cell technology. They said that it could hold the key to finding cures to Africa's most significant diseases. Having said that, do you think that this area of research is often misunderstood?
Absolutely. Look, it is a very broad and technical subject. And, people often, when they hear the word stem cells, they would think of cloning or embryonic stem cells. And yes, these things form a part of stem cell technology as a whole. And they have a very important place in research. Taking cells that are diseased and then cloning them and using them in testing for potential cures is a really, really fantastic way to speed up research rather than conducting testing on live animals or humans, So it definitely has its place as long as it's not abused. And what people mustn't get confused with then is that any stem cell is used for cloning, and these things are not conducted in improper ways, The way that we apply stem cells today in treatment facilities is a routine procedure. For instance, there's at least 3 major treatment facilities here in South Africa, the largest one being at Pretoria East Hospital. And they treat probably around 120 patients a year with stem cell technology. It is a misunderstood thing, whereas, it's a routine procedure that's being conducted almost daily here in Africa.
Are there some harmful effects that often accompany stem cell treatments?
Well, look, properly registered treatment that's applied in a proper way by experts, stem cells cannot be harmful. These treatments are often for very rare and high-risk, often fatal diseases. So, people may succumb to their illnesses and treatments may not be successful, which is just a fact of life with anything that you're trying to treat. So, this is exactly the point where people who are in a very, very life-threatening situation are obviously desperate to find a cure. And as long as that cure or the treatment is conducted in a proper hospital by proper doctors in a registered way, it's not dangerous beyond the normal, danger of being ill. But now there's a thing called stem cell tourism where people are being treated for all sorts of weird and wonderful things that aren't properly structured, and they're paying huge sums of money, which is incredibly dangerous because there may be no basis that their treatment has any chance of being successful, and people are spending lots of money on it, and that can be very dangerous.
What, in your view, needs to be done to create more awareness around stem cells and ensure that researchers are able to investigate and understand diseases through this technology?
Well, I think there's two things we can do. Number one, encourage the collaboration of scientists within the universities and research institutions to share knowledge, because it's a very fast, rapidly expanding industry, and if we share knowledge, we can learn from each other. The second thing that we can do is talk about it more. With anything to improve education and awareness, number one is start with dialogue and make sure that people are getting the right message, that are not being misled or getting a half-truth. This is something that Cryo-Save believes in. We've got a help desk here. If anybody's wondering whether they need treatment or they have an opportunity to store their baby stem cells, because that's one of the key opportunities that we're missing here in Africa. The umbilical cord blood of a child is very rich in some very unique stem cells, and we shouldn't be throwing them away. We should be storing them. And if people need advice about any of this, they can find a lot of information on our website. If you Google Cryo-Save, Cryo-Save, you'll find our website. There's a hell of a lot of information there, and there's also our contact information. So that can be the first point for people to start to gain awareness, knowledge, and understanding of how stem cells can be used in a positive and constructive way to treat some very rare diseases.